should be black, but fine. So how do you want to proceed? So I can go through slide by slide, so and we can discuss about it. So you can make comments, and I will write down comments and so far. Or do you want me to read all the slides and then at the end let the discussion at the end? So slide by slide. Okay. So this survey, this clinical audit was created in two different parts. The first part is general part, and a question about your center. So what your center does on vaccination, and the second part is specifically designed for different kind of vaccination. So the first question is really simple. Is an official immunization protocol for pediatric transplant patient available in your hospital? So do you have a defined protocol in your hospital for transplant patient? Okay. This is really simple. It's yes, no, other. Of course, when you're entering this side of clinical, you have to define who you are, what center is yours, and if we are talking about solid organ transplant or hematopoietic stem cell transplant. Okay. After that, the first question could be, is an official immunization protocol for pediatric transplant patient available in your hospital? Do you want to add something? Yes, no, other? This is fine for you? Okay. The second question is more complicated, is how many patients are fully immunized at the time of transplantation? Of course, this according to the schedule is available in your country, but just an average of patients that are fully immunized will be an interesting benchmark to start, okay? The third question will be, how can you explain the under-immunization of pediatric transplant recipients? So in this one, you can mark more than one answer. So not enough time before transplant, so the patient is too young. Parents' hesitancy, primary care physician hesitancy, specialist hesitancy, so your hesitancy in this case. Vaccines are not a focus for us, or other. Do you have other proposal or suggestion for this?
Can I put, in our context, there is a specific decision about we have got enough time, but we think the patient is too sick.
Yeah.
Does that come under physician hesitancy, or is that something more specific?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So thank you. It's white now. No, but it's not the question. Okay. So it's juicy. Okay, because in literature, for example, we are, literature raised the same problem. So they are chronically ill and always sick, and there is no time to do vaccination. We can add this, for example. I have a pin now. Okay. We are collecting this your comment.
Yeah, so it's a specific decision about it would entail a delay before transplant. So there's something about time or not enough time, but also would it make the patient sick, or would the immunity of the patient respond in any case? So yeah, so we decide that let's just go ahead and get the patient transplanted.
Okay. Who do you decide this? You?
Yes.
So your team?
Yes.
Okay.
The
do you discuss about this with the primary care physician, or do you have vaccines clinics?
No. We notify the primary care physician, but they would be looking to us to give them permission.
Okay. Any other comment?
May I go back to the two questions a sec?
The first one?
No, the one with that one. If
I think that we could maybe change the options, because the ideal text of immunization in the population is 70–80%. So between 75 and 100, there is probably all the answers. And you can differentiate that. Maybe 90 is good, 75 is very low, and all will choose the same option.
Okay, so for you the gap is too big. Okay, so we can change for 100%, 90, 100%, 70, 90. Okay, so we can reduce the gap. Okay. Thank you.
As for the second question, what do you mean by fully immunized? According to the age, because
for the vaccination planning schedule on your country schedule. So for all the vaccinations that are being planned for the vaccination schedule.
According to the age. So according to the age.
According to the age. Okay.
Including immunization for indications like chronic disease?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We can according to the age. Okay.
Just because you mentioned and because you offer us the possibility of making comments in it, like, I think it's important to remember that to be vaccinated, sorry, I'm an immunologist, so this is a immunological perspective. To be vaccinated is not the same that to be immunized. So you have to specify if what you are referring there is the fact that the children receive the vaccines that are supposed to receive, towards the fact that they are fully immunized, that they respond and that they create a protective response, which is not always easy to measure, and it cannot be measured for all the vaccines. So I think that it's important that what you probably mentioned here is just fully vaccinated, not fully immunized. Sorry, I think it's an important...
I completely agree with you.
Okay.
So vaccination doesn't mean immunization, and we will see this in the specific part dedicated to vaccines. No, because you're right, perfectly right. But this question were more focused on the attitude of the doctor's attitude more than vaccine by vaccine. So we'll see this. Okay, later on. Thank you. So the other question is the pre-transplant period, and we see later in the post-transplant period. Are vaccinations provided by your center? All vaccination provided, some vaccination provided, and in this case, you have to choose which vaccination is provided, and no vaccination is provided. Okay.
I know that there are different policies in different countries, but for instance in Portugal, vaccination is provided, completely provided by the government, but not by the center. So I would answer no, and all my patients are vaccinated.
Exactly. Also here, but the question is, do you think that your patient will be better vaccinated if you will provide the vaccine to them? Or you're referring to another?
That's another question.
Yeah, no, you're right, but okay, this is provocative, but you see, because in the pre-transplant period and post-transplant period are two different questions. Yes?
Can I just check?
Extrapolating from that, who makes the decision and who points the needle?
Exactly.
So we make the decision, but usually the primary care physician is instructed to do it on our behalf.
But ideally, so I think that for vaccination, especially for vaccination, you need a network, so a quick connection between who prescribes vaccine and who does vaccine, so administer vaccine, you see? Because sometimes you can write in a letter, say, okay, when at the end, for example, I say, okay, the patient can receive a vaccine, very age vaccination, but someone else will give him the vaccine. So are you connecting to them, so you know in real time when the vaccine are administered or not? So this is the question. So do you think that in your clinic will be better administer vaccination after you visit the patient? To increase compliance.
Maybe we should add a question before the others.
Okay.
Maybe we should add a question before this one and say, in your country, who decides, who suggested the vaccination program to be done, and who really does vaccines? Okay, and then you have another question. Would you think that the transplant center doing vaccines would ameliorate I don't know, what do you think? Because I think we're discussing about different points altogether.
Okay, so why don't you administer administer vaccination in your center. So I just put in some reasons for vaccines not provided, high cost, staff not trained, vaccination not covered by insurance, time-consuming process, or other. For example, this is not our role, it's not our job. Someone else doing that in our country.
Can I just check? Why don't you administer? But if you do, I mean, for example, in our centre, we would give the hepatitis A and B vaccines,
Okay.
and the varicella, but we wouldn't do the others. We would instruct the. So when you say why don't you administer, is that why don't you administer any, in which case we do so,
Okay.
or why don't you administer the ones that you don't administer, which would be.
Okay, we can explore this question after. If you check yes, and all vaccines is not nothing else. So if you have some, we can ask for why don't you administer vaccination, or this kind, they are the remaining vaccination in your center. If it's not, this question will be why don't you administer vaccination in your center, so we can stratify, okay, this question. Do you,
But you know, at the end of the day, what is important is the patient is vaccinated, doesn't matter where. So why do you think you should say in your center we should vaccinate the patients if it's easy for them to be vaccinated in the primary care?
this question are more focused on the behavior of the physician and to find potential, because from literature, some barriers that who prescribe vaccines is not the same that administer vaccines. And this could be a problem in vaccines immunizations compliance. So the question is at the end, if you prescribe vaccination and you are the same day you administer it because you think that the patient needs it, okay, this will increase the compliance or not? Because you see, I think that this is another part of the complexity of the transplantation. So, because you're saying that the patient have to receive vaccines, but we are not, probably in some countries, in some cases, we are not well connected with the patient that have to administer the vaccination.
But also there is a point, you see, and Alistair mentioned this, you see, in some cases, you know, maybe, for example, you have a sick kid, the decision of making a vaccine, it is an MDM decision. I've been asked, you know, when I see a patient with transplant, do you think we should vaccinate this patient or not? So it is not just one person decision, really. You understand what I mean? So obviously, because then the problem is that the transplant will be delayed, depending on certain vaccines. And therefore, you know, maybe the opinion of the surgeon was, no, we need to do this straight away. Why you give the vaccine? You understand what I mean? So I don't know how useful it will be, but I'm just being putting our opinion forward there.
Okay.
I think we are dealing with the two different issues, because if I understand correctly, what you think is that it is a decision of the transplant team if to vaccinate the child, for example, for chickenpox, because it takes 1 month before transplanting the child. And I guess Daniele is saying that he's trying to explain a problem that we have here in Italy, that here in Italy we have vaccination clinics, so we prescribe the vaccines, but sometimes the clinics are afraid to vaccinate this very sick child, so probably this is, we are dealing with two different concepts in a single question, so I don't know, maybe you should explain a little bit differently the
So we're
question.
referring all the vaccination or immunization, just to try to catch the general behavior among vaccination in this patient, okay? So, and vaccination in this patient are complicated. Some physicians that work in a vaccine clinic refer to the transplant team. And so the question is, would have to be, if you're the prescriber of vaccine and you're at the same time you're the administrator of vaccine, probably the compliance would be higher. Just this, because this is what the literature suggests, okay? But this will be more complicated because more time consuming. You have also in your clinic you have to administer vaccination, not only just the visit and stuff like that. But we can, I think we can, you're right, we can make this question more focused on this, okay? this is provocative as well. So what is the influenza vaccine coverage rate among the healthcare workers in your hospital, referring to the last season? Okay, so do you agree with the range proposed? Do you have a high coverage in your hospital for healthcare workers or not? In UK, yes. In Spain, yes.
It's compulsory.
In Italy, is it compulsory in UK? For
It's
this?
totally volunteer.
But they have a very strong campaign, so they suggest you to vaccines, and if you're working, you're allowed to say, hi, I'm the
Actually, the major objective of the CEO of the hospital is to make in our hospital to make sure that the percentage of people who are vaccinated is between 80 to 100%.
I think our percentage is lower. So talking about vaccine specific, okay? So I divided this part in two further parts. So the first one is live vaccines, with special mention to varicella vaccine, MMR vaccine, and then activated vaccine in the other part. So starting from the point that vaccinated patients are not 100% immunized, so we are not sure. The first question is, do you check antibody titer before the admission on the waiting list? So never, rarely, sometimes, always.
The one I have a little bit of difficulty with is always. It's always 100% or always intended to and hit 95% or something.
If you want, we can put like a range of percentage, okay? So always will be...
Is it the intention for it?
So I think this will be impossible to cover the... I think it's the intention. Just we want to capture... So this is not consistent in literature. So this point, so we create this question because we found inconsistency in literature while doing the webinar. So the question is just to have a snapshot of what's happening in Europe now. So your intention for now. So do you check antibody titer before the admission waiting list? So what do you do? So usually with your patient. Okay. Do you check antibody titer while the patient is on waiting list? So not before, but just on during. The other question is, do you recommend varicella vaccine before transplant? And do you use an accelerated schedule for varicella, so at 6 months of age, according to transplant urgency? Of course, any comments are well accepted. So this is draft. So if you want to discuss something, just let me know, and we can change.
A range of attitudes. This doesn't discriminate what we usually do. Instead, sometimes, maybe usually, it's more extreme.
Yeah. Okay, so also never, probably is too much.
Never, always.
Never, always, okay. Something to avoid, okay. So we will try to replace this, especially never always, with a range, okay, percentage. So, but just to have an estimation of what's happening, okay? How long do you wait before proceeding with transplant after this vaccination? Okay, referring to varicella. So this is all the pre-transplant period. So talking, okay, on varicella and the post-transplant period. The question is, do you check antibody titer after transplant? Okay, we will change never, rarely, sometimes, and always. And if sometimes or always, how long do you wait before monitoring antibodies? Immediately, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, rather. This is not well defined in literature. Is it okay for you? Okay. So now we're going to change this draft, okay, with your according to your comments, and then we're going to send you again. So before I put this clinical audit up and running. So the other question is, do we administer this vaccine in the post-transplant period? Of course, this clinical audit is for solid organ transplant, but also for hematopoietic stem cell transplant. Okay, so yes, no other. And if yes, how long do you wait for vaccine administration after transplant? 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 12, until the child is single agent immunosuppression, until the child is weaned off steroids or other.
Regarding this question of do you administer this vaccine in the post-transplant period? Yes, obviously, no is no. Other could be in some specific cases, you know that it's an open question to vaccine against varicella in some cases that fulfill some criteria. They're doing well, no rejection, no much immunosuppression. I don't know if changing order for some specific cases could be more easy to understand and to...
Okay, yeah, I agree. Thank you. Other comments? Okay, so for MMR vaccine, it's almost the same for varicella as it is a live vaccine. So we just copy and paste what already said for varicella, and then I take this as an example of an activated vaccine. So, and we'll do the same thing, so copy and paste for the other. Just to be clear, we have we can check antibody titer just for some of these. So hepatitis B, tetanus, hepatitis A. So for the others, no possibility. But you see, so talking about inactivated vaccination, the pre-transplant period, the question is, do you check antibody titer before the admission in the waiting list? Okay. Do you check antibody titer while the patient is on waiting list? Do you recommend this vaccine before transplant? And also in this case, how long do you wait before proceeding with transplant after this vaccination? In the post-transplant period, for inactivated vaccine, conjugate vaccine, do you check antibody titer after transplant? And if yes, how long do you wait before monitoring antibodies? And do you administer this vaccine in the post-transplant period? And if yes, how long do you wait for vaccine administration after transplant? So in this case, for pneumococcal vaccine, this is the last one because is the case that you cannot check antibody titer for this. So the question will be, do you check previous pneumococcal vaccines before the admission to the waiting list? And especially for pneumococcal vaccine, we have a different schedule that I want to suggest. So I would like to understand exactly what you're doing in your countries. So because we have two different types of vaccine, PCV13 and PPS23. So this is what I found and I present in the webinar, but I'm not sure that you are, all of you are doing the same thing. So the question was, I think that general schedule for pneumococcal vaccine in children less than 2 years of age will be 3 doses of PCV13. And from 2 to 6 years of age, the third dose of PCV13 is replaced by PPSV23. Is the same for you? No? Pneumococcal is a mess every time, so but okay, this is a recommendation that we have, just to know exactly what you are doing, so what is the current situation about pneumococcal vaccine. I just want to see, this is one question, is different from other, because you see pneumococcal infection with varicella have a high morbidity, mortality in transplant patients, so just to be more focused on these vaccines. Okay, so from other type of vaccination. So for inactivated vaccine or conjugated vaccine, the question and the answer are almost the same that we have for tetanus. So do you have general comments?
No, I have a comment.
Daniele, do you think that for bone marrow transplant there are some differences that should be made throughout all those questions?
Yes. Bone marrow transplant are completely different from solid organ transplant. So we actually, the questions are the same, but we have modeled the answer in a different way, just to be able to apply this also for a different population.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. So we start with this clinical audit to just define what the population we are referring to, and then we go through slide by slide and say, okay, in the possible answer include also a specific window of time that fit very well with the bone marrow transplant population. So, for example, varicella is almost a contraindicated lifelong for solid organ transplant, but we have from the possibility you can choose 24 months that can be applied for this population. So we thought about both population while doing this. So and we will model the answer according to the different population referring to.
Because those questionnaires should go also for the bone marrow transplant units, is that right? Yes.
Yeah. So you see, when antibody titers are available, we always ask, okay, if the patient is vaccinated, do you check the antibody titer before put them in a waiting list, and also while they are on a waiting list. Okay. Do you have other suggestions about the?
There is a blue box pointed to by the blue arrow. Because a yes goes in there. What am I supposed to put in that blue box?
No, it's just if yes. How long do you wait for vaccine administration? Do you administer this vaccine in the post-transplant period? If yes, and the blue box is yes, okay. How long do you, okay, in yes, okay, and then if you check yes, it will pop up this, how long do you wait for vaccine administration after transplantation? So it is also. Do you want to add something, especially from the first part on behavior of doctors, or the attitude of doctors? Do you need more questions?
Yeah. Yes, I just want to do some suggestion. I'm asking myself, take advantage to having you here to ask yourself. Would it make sense to include a couple of questions about prophylaxis of respiratory syncytial virus? It's not probably a vaccine, but I think it would make sense to include because it's, just a couple of questions. How many of us are making some kind of prophylaxis against this virus? And maybe which is the indications, I don't know, in terms of age or in terms of if they have some, were premature or have some cardiac associated disease. It would be interesting to know which is the.
My suggestion, sorry, very briefly, would be to include maybe in all the slides or maybe at the end, if for any of these decisions you get any support, not only for the clinical, it's important for the clinical status of the patient, the time from transplantation, but if there is any insight about the immunological situation of the child. So for instance, if you have measured immunoglobulins when you decide for vaccination for conjugated vaccines, and for instance, if you look or you take into account the lymphocyte absolute counts or even more subpopulation of lymphocytes when deciding for attenuated vaccines. I guess that's something that is not usually done. It's not also easy to measure what's the immunological competence of a child that is under immunosuppression, but I think that that will help to take more personalized decisions. In bone marrow transplantation, this is normally done because there is usually a protocol for the analysis of the immune constitution after the bone marrow transplantation, and usually decisions on vaccination are taken based on what's the stage of recovery of the immune status of the child. But for instance, although some solid organ transplant have very intense induction therapies of immunosuppression, it's not a common practice, just really to incorporate somehow immunological insights for taking these decisions. I think that it would be important, although it's even probably less established, somehow to incorporate some questions to get an insight about this possibility. That would be my general suggestion for a very well defined, otherwise survey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there is no other question, I think we are done.
As opposition to vaccination is an increasing problem in our country as in other countries, what do you think about adding a question that is, how do you face parents or family refusal of vaccination? Personally, my slogan is no vaccination, no transplantation, and no one can move me from this statement. But maybe other colleagues have different approaches, so maybe it can be interesting to have this question.
Okay, I completely agree with you. So we can add a question on the behavioral part just to define better. So we can specify exactly if we're talking about the under-immunization for all vaccines, so what we do for this, and the other specific part for example, varicella vaccine and other things. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, well, more questions? Okay. Most of you know perfectly that this line of work we started with this healthcare working group, with this clinical audits project, was that of create some surveys about some topics without no standard approach, and with two parts. The first part is this survey Dr. Donà have presented, and the second part was trying to harvest how many cases, clinical cases, in this situation would be something like how many infectious clinical cases you have had in your program because of preventable infectious agents, and harvest them just to support or know if our approach is, we are doing well or not so well. I don't know, in the case of the first audit, the PTLD, we harvest cases from 5 years. I don't know if how many years makes sense to check. 5 years, 10 years? 5 years. So what do you think? Yes, harvest your 5 years clinical cases with this infectious. 5 years could be fine for all of you.
It depends on the difficulty of collecting the data.
And we try to find a balance between 5 years. Okay, last thing. At the first audit, we have finished it. We have the draft, the paper draft. We are trying to complete to get the final paper to be sent to the journals on PTLD with the results. Just collecting the experience, I would say that it has taken probably more time than necessary to have this final paper, and reviewing the process probably it took too much time for us to get in the responses from the service. So I would encourage you to try to make this time of sending back your answers shorter, so that the whole process is more practical and more. So thank you.